For 30 days, you replaced everything in your kitchen with what your great-great-great-grandmother would have recognized as food. No labels, no packaging, no ingredients you can't pronounce. Just meat, fish, fermented things, roots, grains, and whatever was in season. And by the end of it, your blood markers had shifted, your sleep had changed, your gut had basically been rebuilt from scratch, and you had some very strong opinions about liver. This is what happened. Here's the question that started everything. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Agriculture only showed up about 10,000 years ago, and the ultra-processed food system most of us eat from today, less than 100 years old. So your body, your actual biology, the machinery running underneath everything, evolved over hundreds of thousands of years on a very specific set of inputs. Wild animals, seasonal plants, fermented food made out of necessity, not trend. Organ meats, bone broth, whole grains ground by hand. And then in the space of one generation, almost all of that got replaced with refined flour, seed oils, and flavor powders engineered in a lab to make you eat past the point of fullness. Scientists call it the mismatch hypothesis, the idea that many of the chronic diseases defining modern life exist because your biology is running software designed for a completely different world. Your body expects one set of inputs. You give it another. And over time, things start to go wrong in ways that feel mysterious but maybe aren't. Now, this isn't a romanticization of the past. Life expectancy was brutal for our ancestors. Infections, injuries, harsh winters. But rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and inflammatory conditions. Remarkably low compared to what we're dealing with now. So the question became, what actually happens when a modern person strips it all back and eats the way humans ate for most of human history? 30 days. One experiment. Real blood work. Let's get into it. The diet was built around what Northern European ancestors would have eaten roughly 500 to 1,000 years ago, cross-referenced with current nutritional research. The rules: only whole, unprocessed foods. If it came in a packet with more than one ingredient, it didn't make the cut. Seasonal and locally sourced wherever possible. Nothing flown in from another hemisphere in the middle of winter. Fermented foods at every meal. Real sourdough, kefir, sauerkraut, aged cheeses. Organ meats at least twice a week. Liver, kidney, heart. The cuts your great-grandmother would have fought over that somehow became the things modern supermarkets hide at the back of the shelf. No refined sugar. No vegetable or seed oils. No alcohol. No snacking. 3 meals spaced out. The way people ate before the fridge became a second living room you visited every 40 minutes. That last rule sounds simple. It was not simple. Days 1 through 4 were rough in a way that nothing had prepared for. There was a headache that sat behind the eyes for 3 straight days, a tiredness that hit around 2 in the afternoon like a wall, and an irritability that can only be described as everyone around you is making sounds. This is actually documented. When you radically shift away from a high glycemic diet, your body goes through a genuine withdrawal phase. The gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive system, begins to change when the food it's been fed for years suddenly disappears. That transition is not comfortable. It's not glamorous. It is very much not what the linen shirt wellness influencers prepared you for. But then something happened on day 6. You woke up, and the fog was gone. Not better. Not fine. Actually clear. Like someone had quietly adjusted the resolution on your brain while you were sleeping and hadn't mentioned it. And that was the moment the experiment got interesting. The first thing that changed in week 2 was hunger, or rather the disappearance of it as a constant background noise. On a standard modern diet, hunger comes back every 2 to 3 hours. That's the blood sugar roller coaster. A meal spikes your glucose. Insulin surges to bring it back down. It overshoots, you crash, you snack, you spike again. It's not a character flaw. It's just what refined carbohydrates do to your body's energy regulation system. On whole, ancestral foods, especially meals built around fat, protein, and fiber, digestion slows down. Glucose rises gently. insulin responds proportionally, and hunger, actual physical hunger, stops being the thing organizing your entire day. 3 meals, hours of genuine satiety between them. It felt almost suspicious at first. The fermented foods were the other major story of week 2. Kefir with breakfast, sourdough with lunch, sauerkraut with dinner, every single day. And around day 10, digestion became almost unreasonably smooth. Research on fermented foods has expanded significantly in the last decade. There's strong evidence that regular consumption increases gut microbiome diversity, which connects to immune function, inflammation levels, and even mood. Your gut and your brain are linked directly through the vagus nerve. What happens in your digestive system genuinely doesn't stay there. By week 3, something unexpected showed up that hadn't been planned for. The skin changed, less redness, a clarity that hadn't been there before. Multiple people mentioned it without being asked. The likely reasons: no refined sugar means less glycation, a process that degrades collagen over time. More omega-3 from wild-caught fish reduces systemic inflammation, and removing seed oils high in omega-6 reduces the pro-inflammatory load that shows up on the skin's surface. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and it was unplanned, and that made it more interesting. This was the part no one saw coming. The experiment was designed around physical health, blood markers, gut function, energy levels. Mental health was not on the tracking list, but by week 3, something had shifted that didn't have a clean explanation. The baseline anxiety, the low-level hum that most people just accept as the background noise of modern life, got quieter. Not gone, but noticeably reduced. Like a sound you'd stopped registering until someone finally turned the volume down. Sleep deepened. REM and deep sleep data both improved by week 2 and stayed elevated through the end of the experiment. Waking before an alarm, something that had never happened voluntarily, became routine. The research points back to the gut-brain axis. Approximately 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut, not the brain. When the microbiome improves, neurotransmitter production can follow. Stable blood sugar also means stable cortisol. Your primary stress hormone has far less reason to spike when glucose isn't swinging wildly throughout the day. It's not complicated. It's just not something that gets talked about in the way it probably should be. Honesty requires covering the parts that were genuinely terrible. The organ meats. Liver is one of the most nutrient-dense foods that exists. B12, folate, iron, copper, vitamin A at concentrations no supplement comes close to matching. Eating it twice a week is objectively nutritionally excellent. It is also an experience, a very specific experience. A pâté recipe helped by day 20. That's the most positive framing available. The social cost was significant. Going out for dinner while avoiding seed oils, refined sugar, and anything processed means becoming the person at the table who asks 17 questions about how the food was cooked. Nobody wants to be that person. You become that person anyway. It is a strange month for your friendships. And convenience? That's the real opponent here. This way of eating takes time. Real sourdough ferments for days. Bone broth simmers for hours. Fermented vegetables need a week before they're ready. Our ancestors didn't have a choice about putting in that effort. We have built an entire civilization specifically to avoid it. Reversing that, even partially, is not a small ask. The things that were missed, the ease of modern food more than the food itself, the ability to just order something without a 20-minute conversation about cooking oils. Here's the realistic, honest conclusion. The full version of this, every rule, every restriction, every organ meat, forever, isn't something most people can sustain inside a modern life. And that's not failure. That's just an honest accounting of how the world works. But the point was never to live in 1200 AD. The point was to understand how far the modern default diet sits from what the human body was built for, and to find the moves that are actually worth making. What stayed? Fermented foods every day. Kefir in the morning, sauerkraut with dinner. The gut responds to this quickly, and the effect is noticeable enough that skipping it now feels like a choice you'd notice. No seed oils at home. Cooking with butter, olive oil, occasionally tallow. This turned out to be one of the easiest sustained changes. The difference in how food tastes is significant. Organ meats once a week, hidden inside other things. You do what you have to do. Real sourdough only. The kind that's actually fermented, not the supermarket version that borrowed the name. 3 meals. No snacking as a habit. Not perfect every day, but as a default. What came back? Pizza. Occasionally. Without guilt. Because our ancestors also understood the value of a feast, and because living well includes enjoying the world as it actually exists, not as it existed 1,000 years ago. The most useful thing this experiment gave wasn't the bloodwork results or the sleep data or the unexpected skin improvement. It was the reminder that food is information. Every meal is a signal sent to the body about what environment it's living in, what it should be doing, how it needs to function. For 30 days, you sent different signals, and the body responded, measurably, clearly, across multiple systems at once. Your biology is not broken. It might just be waiting for different inputs. If you want to start somewhere, start with fermented foods, 1 serving a day. Kefir, real sauerkraut, kimchi, sourdough. Give it 2 weeks and pay attention to what changes. The full meal plan, the bloodwork breakdown, and everything else from the experiment is linked in the description. Drop in the comments. What's one thing from this you'd actually try? Genuinely curious what lands. See you in the next one.